It gives me a great pleasure to welcome my sister and Dr. Nolita Pukusa to start the program.
Thank you, my brother. This part of the world, we call each other sister and brother. It's easy to do that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this launch of the Center for Africa-China Studies, commonly and famously known as CACS. Is it CACS? Yes, I like that. Yes. Before we begin with the activities of the program, I would like to recognize amongst our midst our very capable Vice-Chancellor and Principal, otherwise known as the Bishop of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Professor Marwala, and His Excellency Ambassador Lin Songtian, Ni Hao. Members of the diplomatic community, and I have seen so many very important faces here, and I am so scared that I say something about someone and then I do not about the other. But to our very esteemed dad, Dr. Esop Pahat, you're welcome. And Professor Mutambara, I also see you, and I beg your pardon if I have not seen others. Strategic partners of the University of Johannesburg, colleagues and members of the Confucius Institute, students who are here present, members of civil society, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. The launch of the Center for Africa-China Studies could not have come at a better time than now, Mr. Ambassador, because the year 2018 marks 18 years since the establishment of the Forum for Africa-China Cooperation. It also marks 20 years of South Africa-China diplomatic relations, which we enjoy very much. Thank you very much for that. And it also marks 40th anniversary of China's opening up policy. The launch of this center comes in the wake of the successful BRICS summit that was held earlier this year in July, and the Forum for Africa-China Cooperation that was held in Beijing in September from the 3rd and the 4th. These events gave impetus for the researchers of the center to produce policy briefs on Africa-China relations before its official launch, at which we were all gathered here. Frankly, I did think that all of this had already been long in motion. I'm surprised it is the beginning today, because I know that things have been happening at the center. The wheels of the center are already in motion, as I'm saying. The Center for Africa-China Studies is an autonomous division, and I couldn't help but notice, Dr. Monyaye, the operative word autonomous. And I thought you were saying to us at the VC's office, back off. It's an autonomous division that will focus on research development and publication, which I think is a very good thing. That would reach to the wider audience of South Africa, of China, of Africa, and the world over. The center would, of course, offer our staff and students a space for engagement through knowledge production and vigorous output in the spectrum of all spheres of Africa-China relations. I think that we need there to just give it a big round of applause. And therefore, your contribution in research and knowledge production would be really highly appreciated. So before I call upon the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Marwala, I would like to thank you again for taking your time out of your very, very busy schedule to come here and to attend this launch and to be witness to this very august occasion. So I'm going to be calling upon the Vice-Chancellor. And Vice-Chancellor, after your speech, if you could so very well introduce the Ambassador, I'll be very happy. Thank you.
Ni hao. Sanwanan. Dumelang. We apologize. We started a little bit late. I had a meeting with the ambassador, which was supposed to last for 30 minutes, but it lasted for longer than what we expected. The ambassador is a very energetic diplomat who absolutely is passionate about China-Africa relationship. Ambassador Lin Songtian, welcome to the Confucius Institute at the University of Johannesburg. Other diplomats and government officials, the directors of the Confucius Institute, who have worked very, very hard to make this a model institute in South Africa. Model not in terms of the levels, but in terms of performance. Also, strategic partners of the University of Johannesburg and the Confucius Institute, representatives from other Confucius Institutes in South Africa and beyond, civil society leaders, colleagues, students, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. I even saw a great friend of the Confucius Institute, Dr. Pahad. He actually participates quite vigorously as he used to participate in the Central Committee of the South African Communist Party many, many years ago, when he was still a communist, you know. I know he's not a happy man the way I say it. I'm talking about the modern communist. You know. I welcome, and I also would like to acknowledge Dr. Nolita, who is directing this program. As the University of Johannesburg, we actually believe in the future. And we are very enthusiastic about the future. Not the future of just this country, but the future of this continent. We understand that we are not where we are supposed to be as a continent. Professor Mutambaga, you keep on telling us this, that we are not supposed to be. By the way, Professor Mutambaga is a professor at the University of Johannesburg, but also a former Deputy Prime Minister of Zimbabwe. He is quite passionate, articulating that we are not where we are supposed to be. Lots of conflict still remain, and not just physical conflict, but also conflict as to where we are going as a continent of Africa. But we are getting there. So today, the center being established here today is the culmination of a vision we have had for a very long time at the University of Johannesburg. There is no doubt that China has emerged as a leading country in the world. Certainly in many indicators such as infrastructure. I did spend some time last year in New York. And I was making a joke that if you go to Shanghai and then you go to the underground train in New York, you would think that you are in a squatter camp in New York. The trains are very, very old, and they are very, very slow, and they make a lot of noise. Whereas when you go to China, the trains are very, very modern. And I think it is a clear indication of the leadership that China has taken in the world. Professor Mutambara, you keep on referring to this. I'm going to paraphrase what you said. That part of the reason why China has made such huge strides, certainly in the infrastructure, is because most of the leaders of China are actually engineers. The current president, President Xi Jinping, is actually a chemical engineer. The one who preceded him, President Hu Jintao, was actually a civil engineer. The one who preceded him, Jiang Zemin, was an electrical engineer. I can go on and on and on, but I don't want to. And I'm not campaigning. I'm not campaigning for any leadership position, and I'm not available. So, for Africa in particular, this relationship is crucial because we believe this partnership is going to be a catalyst for trade and investment between the two continents, the two countries, South Africa and China, but also between the continent of Africa and China. The continent now has 1.2 billion people, and we are catching up, Ambassador. By the end of 2030, Africa will have more people than China, and more people means the market is going to be larger if we do certain things right. Just not too long ago, a delegation to show this great friendship between the two parties, a delegation of 40 African heads of state and government, as well as the AU Commission this year, attended the 7th Forum of China-Africa Cooperation Summit in early September. 40 heads of state actually attended this event. I am told that there were 8 state visits during that time. Maybe one of the largest state visits from a single continent that China has ever witnessed. And this is because this relationship is important. But this relationship should not just be important, but it should be mutually beneficial. I think that is very, very key. I saw a lead article on the Time magazine, which I actually responded to. You can go to Time magazine and read about this, where they were talking about China as the new colonizer to the continent. We don't see this. Of course, we understand that in the game of complex global international relations, that fake news can be used as an economic advantage. We believe that, of course, as we enter any form of relationships, our eyes must be wide open, isn't it, Professor? Our eyes are wide open, and we are opening up opportunities for our continent, because one of the things that we were discussing with the ambassador was what Africa should do in order to progress. The ambassador mentioned 3 things. Infrastructure development, very, very, very important. The African continent is not connected. Things have improved. There was a time when if you were moving from Gabon to Nigeria, you had to first fly to Europe. There was a time like that. Now you can do the trip through Ethiopia. It's not an optimal way of traveling, but it's certainly better than going to Paris. So he mentioned the infrastructure, very, very important. The second thing that he mentioned is human resource development. And in our partnership with China, we pay very particular attention to human resource development. Not too long ago, a young man from one of Orange Farm, who was a member of our SRC, came to me and said, he wants to study further after he finished his engineering degree. What should he do? He was studying electrical engineering. I am an expert on artificial intelligence. I said, maybe you should study artificial intelligence for your master's. His name is Sigusiso. Then he came and did his master's, which he got with distinction. And he said, I see you studied in America and England, and I'm interested to go and study in America or England. I said, why would you want to study in America or England? The world has changed. Go and study in China. And then obviously we introduced him to the Confucius Institute. He is now studying at Beijing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics for his PhD, Beihang. And this is really what this is all about. Capacitating our human resources so that they can be critical to the development of the African continent, so that the African continent cannot lag behind as it lagged behind in the past. And the third thing that the ambassador said, which is something that we need to really work on, the work ethics of our people, whether it is in government, whether it is in restaurants, basically creating an environment where when you go and interact with our bureaucrat, you feel that you have been assisted. And this we are working very, very, very hard. And I see there are some student leaders here. I am quite a bit of a strict disciplinarian as a Vice-Chancellor. Because I believe that if we do not put discipline, we are basically condemning our people to poverty. Because when somebody goes to China or to United States and get a better experience, that is where they are going to do business in the future. So every member of our society is very, very important in the development of our country. What if you give somebody a bad experience? You are basically chasing away an investment. And chasing away an investment is absolutely detrimental to our economy. Whichever way you look at it, it cannot be good. If somebody is supposed to invest in our continent and they end up investing in Brazil, it cannot be good for us. In game theory, which is the field of mathematics and economics, they have something called a zero-sum game. I know people say that international relations is not a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game basically means, and I can see my classmate here, Professor Zondi. A zero-sum game means a gain by one party is a loss by another party. If somebody is investing in Zimbabwe, and because of one reason or another, maybe the reason is because Professor Mutambara is no longer a deputy prime minister, and they decide to invest in South Africa, it's a loss for Zimbabwe, and it is a gain for South Africa. If you combine the loss and the gain, you get zero. Negative investment and positive. That's why we call it a zero-sum game. So what we are trying to do is to create an environment so that our continent can actually play the crucial role it is supposed to play in the world affairs, and also so that it can be able to meet its social, political, and economic obligations to its citizens. So this center that we are launching today will close those crucial gaps that actually exist. It will be quite instrumental to make sure that knowledge is actually created so that people can be able to use to advance our economic, political, and social agenda. The idea of making decisions based on evidence is very, very crucial. The Chinese, I think it was Deng Xiaoping, it might have even been Mao. Actually, they call it the separation of truth from facts. Was it Deng Xiaoping? Chairman Mao. The separation of truth from facts. I can see, Wongani, that you're trying to figure out what is the difference between truth and facts, because facts are true. But what it basically says, it says that knowledge, especially multidisciplinary knowledge, is very, very important for us to be able to make rational decisions that are beneficial to our peoples, decisions that are going to add value to our economic and social agendas. And this relationship, for the first time, is going to be about Africans and Chinese on their own terms. There's always a confounding variable. Normally, for many things that we do, European countries are always in the equation. And I think that complicates matters. And I'm not saying that Europe is not important. We have very, very good relationships with Europe, and those relationships must continue. But independently, we have very, very good relationships with China, and those relationships must also continue. As a continent and as a country, we have relationships with all sorts of other countries in South America, in the BRICS, in the continent, in other continents, and so on and so forth. All those relationships must be allowed to flourish at their own terms so that we can be able to maximize the value that we derive from those relationships. So this center will also be interdisciplinary, and in that regard, we expect it to be very engaged and integrated into the university's structures, including the other GES programs and institutes, such as the Sachi Chairs in African diplomacy, very, very crucial to this, the work that is happening on Industry 4.0 in the library, and the rest of the faculties. One of the things that still haunts me is that we have many students who come to our university and complete without actually taking any course in Mandarin. And by the way, this is actually quite basic. Mandarin is spoken by 1.4 billion people. And it is important for us to be able to have our own people who can be able to converse in it. So that when we are negotiating with China, they can be able to independently advise us as to what is happening in the room. We don't have to we don't have to depend on the translators from China. Very, very important, you know. So that is why we have actually put the infrastructure here so that people can be able to learn how to speak Mandarin. So that they can be able to learn how to speak Mandarin so that they are able to interact with China. One of the fastest growing courses in North America and Europe, especially amongst the upper classes, is actually teaching their children Mandarin. You know, that is actually very, very, you go to England now, you see that the upper class are starting to teach their kids Mandarin. And obviously, Mandarin is important because of the economic value of China. But it is also important because it is just spoken by many, many people. You know, South Africa has 11 official languages. And I speak one of those languages. I think they're spoken by 2 million people. And it's very important. Beautiful language. Beautiful language, you know. But from a utilitarian perspective, from a utilitarian perspective, it is important that our students must speak languages that are spoken by many people because it makes sense. So we have seen what the Confucius Institute has done. Last night we just signed an agreement with a huge university in China where they made available 20 scholarships for our students to go and study in China. All expenses covered. Very, very important. So our work is to make sure that we identify students who are actually going to go out there and they study. When I was in China and I was meeting our students who are studying there, I couldn't help believe that they almost look like, they almost behave like different people. There's something that living out in a different space does to your mind, you know. And this is what it is all about. And we want that experience to come so that it can enrich our already rich experience that we have here at the University of Johannesburg. So, going forward, it is important that we put knowledge production, we put language, we put exchange of people, exchange of ideas between China and South Africa, and between China and our continent at the center of what we do. It should not just be about China selling goods to Africa. It should also be about us selling goods to China. It should not just be about Chinese visiting South Africa. It should also be about South Africans visiting China. So, Ambassador, we need to do something about loosening up visa regulations so that we can facilitate movements of people. It should not just be about Chinese business people doing business in our continent. It should also be about people in our continent doing business in China. This is really what it is all about. So, in short, I wish to congratulate Professor Peng. If you could just stand so that you could be acknowledged. And Dr. Munyai. You see, I see Dr. Munyai more on CCTV than I see him on SABC. You know? Dr. Munyai is one of our leading public intellectuals in the country. I was reading his article on Sunday Times last weekend. For establishing this center, thereby laying out the groundwork so that we can be able to strengthen the relationship between our two countries. At this point, I would like to call one of our honored strategic partners as the university and as the Center for Africa-China Studies, the ambassador of the People's Republic of China. In fact, before I came here, he actually gave me a check, a significant check. Not me in person, you know, because I can see Wongani is very, very worried. He's very worried, but no, I think you are going to benefit indirectly because Wongani obviously is the leader of the Johannesburg Institute of Advanced Study, and there are lots of activities that you are going to do with the center. Ambassador Lim Songqian is the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the People's Republic of China to the Republic of South Africa. He was the Director General of the Department of Foreign Affairs from 2010 to 2014, when he became the Director General of African Affairs until his assignment to South Africa in 2017. He has previously served as ambassador to Malawi from 2008 to 2010 and to Liberia from 2003 to 2007. You can see that the ambassador actually knows the African continent, something that we need to do as Africans ourselves. You know. Lin Songtian was the counselor at the Chinese embassy in Zambia from 1999 to 2002, and he served in the Chinese embassy in Saudi Arabia from 1989 to 1990. In between these appointments abroad, he held increasingly important appointments at home in the People's Republic of China, with commercial, management, and personal responsibilities, leading to his appointment as a Director General. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Ambassador to the podium.
Thank you so much, Your Honorable Professor Marwala, Vice-Chancellor and Principal of the University of Johannesburg. And exactly, dear brothers and sisters, Mr. David Mongyaye, the Director of the Center for China, the Center for Africa-China Study. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed to save the time. Good morning. Indeed, it's my great pleasure to be here to see you all here again. We met the new old friend and so many new friends here. I thank you all. First of all, let me, on behalf of the Chinese Embassy in South Africa, in my own name, to express my warm congratulations on the launch of this Center for Africa and China Study of the University of Johannesburg. The establishment of this center, I think, is highly significant for promotion, mutual understanding, and friendship between our two peoples and pushing forward development of China, South Africa, and China-Africa relations. Therefore, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our sincere appreciation to the University of Johannesburg, especially the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Marwala, for your great vision and strong commitment to launch and establish this center. Why I say like that? Because it seems to me the Center for China-Africa Study in Gauteng, although you have a lot of the top-level university or research institute, this is the first I have ever seen. And I went to your HS, Human Science Research Center, right? They have American Study Center, they have European Study Center, but no Chinese Center. So it's quite natural. The people do know nothing about China because we do not have some people pay enough attention, although we already go somewhere. But the people did not recognize who we are. So I appreciate so much. And also just now as the principal and the vice-chancellor, the professor, he's a visionary leader in the university. The language study. Unfortunately, when we have the Chinese language teaching here, the Western people say, no, the Chinese come here to colonialize you. They are lying. We Chinese say everything, tie our bed when we are poor. We send our children, generation by generation, to American, European Union, Australia, Canada, to learn English. Now we welcome the youth from your country to go to teach our English in a nursery school. We pay to learn. But when we come here to teach the Chinese, the Western people say, no, they come here to colonialize you. They are lying. But I'm happy this university take the lead to open the Confucius Institute here. And now, through this bridge, the system relationship between your university and some of the universities in China, we know each other. And now I'm happy, and also with my strong commitment, I like to strengthen this cooperation between the university to university. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is undergoing profound changes unseen in the century. The surging trend towards polarity, economic globalization, IT application, cultural diversity, dynamic scientific innovation, rapid rise of the emerging market and developing countries. To build a community of a shared future for mankind has become to be a shared dream of the people in the world. China is the most important driver of this historical transformation. Over the past 40 years, China has been firmly committed to reform and opening up to the outside world. And we also committed to people-centered approach, as well as fighting against poverty for common prosperity in China. China has achieved an average annual GDP growth rate of 9.5% in the past 40 years, and 14.5% growth rate of annually for its foreign trade. The life of over 1.4 billion population Chinese people have been transformed from austerity to moderate prosperity. That's not too far. 20 years ago, when I came to this country, I was very jealous of you because China was very poor, even 20 years ago. So, when in the past 40 years, we have lifted 740 million people out of poverty. Now, we also enable over 400 million people become mid-income population. The mid-income population, total population in China is more than American the total population. Now China, this is why we say China become the second largest consuming power in the world now. China has created a development miracle never happened before in the textbook of the human history. So this is why the Western people, they do not understand. Because they did not get the knowledge in the textbook. They have not record in the textbook. Of course, they don't understand. Providing a new option for the developing country to exploit their old paths of self-sustainable development and setting a good example for the world human rights cause. Lots of people do not understand what the meaning of human rights. The human right not only by live. The human rights means the right to work, the right to live, the right to go to school, the right to hospital, the right to eat, the right to live, the work, the right to work, the right to live, the right to eat. For over 1.4 billion people, it's not easy, but we got it. China today has become the world's second largest economic, largest manufacturer, largest trading country of goods, the largest holder of foreign exchange reserve, and the major source of FDI and tourists, and the second largest consuming market. Since 2008, China has maintained over 30% contribution of the world economic growth, exceeding the contribution of all developed countries combined. The contribution to drive the economic development in the world, the contribution from one China, more than all the developed countries combined, make it an undisputed main engine for the world economic growth. China now, we have no doubt about that, has become the main engine to drive the economic in the world. China is willing to share the world the great opportunity of its fast development for common prosperity. China will never see China first or China only. Recently, the first China International Import Expo was successfully held in Shanghai. The expo attracted participation of over 3,600 business from 172 countries, regions, and international organizations, including South Africa, which has concluded an expo deal with China with total value of $57.8 billion US dollars. This is the first ever, not only the first, but ever, the national import expo in the world. It is China's major effort to firmly support trade liberalization and economic globalization by taking the lead to open it our market to the world, not see China only. And this is also a concrete action China we have taken to commit ourselves to the win-win cooperation for common development with the world. Ladies and gentlemen, China and Africa has always been a community with a shared future. China regards the African continent as a continent full of hope and always attaches great importance to the development of China-African relations from a long-term and strategic perspective. China is committed to deepening the comprehensive strategic and cooperative partnership featuring equality and win-win cooperation. We come to Africa for partnership instead of ownership. We come here for partnership instead of ownership. Both Chinese and African people are the victim of colonialism and imperialism. We, of course, understand what's the meaning of that. China will never see colonialism in Africa as the Western country did. His Excellency President Xi Jinping attached great importance to the development of China-African relations and paid 4 state visits to this continent in the past 5 years. It's hard for us to see, even in our history. In the past 5 years, my President Xi Jinping paid 4 state visits to this continent, and 3 of them to South Africa. Sometimes the people do not understand how important my president, my government, my people attaches to our relation between. He knows us come here for a joke. Of course, we also appreciate so much His Excellency, President Ramaphosa, when he's busy for the big summit here on July 25th. 24, 1 day ahead. He spent whole day together with his lovely wife to welcome my president and his wife. Whole day state visit. So we appreciate so much. So as you know, of course, my president come here. A month in our history, we have only 3 China-African summit in our history. But 2 of them co-chair, head and co-chair by President Xi Jinping and co-chair with South Africa President. And I think when the first time on March of 2013, when President Xi Jinping he was in the office as a president, and the first visit he visited Africa for the first time since he assumed the office, he initiated the policy and principle to be followed of sincerity, real result, affinity, and good faith, and the values to be upheld of friendship, justice, and shared interest. Not only common interest. He used the words shared future interest. Common, that means we have a lot. Some people share more or less. But he liked to the value which like to uphold the value of not only friendship and justice, but also share interest. So in conducting our relations and cooperation with Africa, that is in the essence of his initiative is to combine China's development with self-sustainable development of African countries so as to achieve the win-win cooperation for common development. When he initiated such an idea, I was at DZ. I got the core meaning of that idea. It's not bad. Just now as the Vice-Chancellor and Principal tell us, What's the meaning of the zero-sum game? That one win, one is lose. This is why Western people, because such a kind of Cold War mindset, mentality. So they don't like to work together with China to make sure the win-win. China said win-win cooperation for common development. The Westerners say, no, when you win, I lose. So this is why we have the conflict. That is the history in the textbook, I'm sorry to say. We have a different idea. Let us work together for the win-win. So at the FOCA Global Summit held in December 2015, President Xi Jinping announced China-African 10 major cooperation plan plus 60 billion US dollars. This continent, you never lack of the conference or summit. You have a lot of plan, announcement. But plus US dollar is very important. How can we implement the plan without the money? My president come here, I'm proud of him. He come here to initiate the 10 cooperation major plan plus 60 US dollars for the 3 years. And in this year, in Beijing summit, he announced another a major initiative plus 60 billion US dollars for the win-win cooperation implementation here. President Xi Jinping, not only that, you can imagine I'm proud of him. During the summit Beijing in September, he held a bilateral meeting with all 53 heads of state or government or AU, including AU, bilateral meeting. He opened a bilateral meeting for all the heads of the delegation, a Chinese anyone else in the world. And that is, we see the friend China-African relations at the equal footing. When your president go to China, of course, my president opened his gate, not only for the summit, but bilateral meeting. More or less, each of them have 20 minutes. My president at least 1 week, every day 12 hours in the People's Great Hall to have the bilateral meeting with all the delegation from the continent. 53 is a big chance for us, but he got it. The purpose is to promote, of course, the aim of the China-African 10 major cooperation plan and a major initiative and the 60 US dollar of funding support announced by President Xi Jinping and at the 2 Focus Summit is to support the continent in its effort to break through 3 bottlenecks in our view. Whoever want to sustain your economic development, there's only 3 bottlenecks you need to break through. One is lack of infrastructure, short of professional and skilled personnel, short of financial resources. Only 3: infrastructure, personnel, human resources development, and financial support. The purpose is to promote Africa's industrialization and agricultural modernization for the win-win cooperation. It is a strong belief that without economic independence, Africa will be politically dependent on others. Sometimes we share the belief. If we're not independent economically, it's hard for us to be independent politically. Now the AU, 70% of the budget depends on EU. How can we expect them to be independent? But of course, they try their best. We will support them. Africa has abundant resources, more than enough, human resources and natural resources, and enough wisdom. What Africa needs is investment and financial support to address the 3 bottlenecks: infrastructure, human resources development, and financial support, instead of empathy lecturers by those who do not have any successful practice out of the office. Whoever can help African continent address these 3 major bottlenecks is the African's true friend and reliable partner. I'm very proud to say that up to now, China has financed and built over 6,500 kilometers of railway in the continent, more than 6,200 kilometers of road, 20 seaports, more than 20 bridges. One of them now in Mozambique, just completed. Over 80 power plants, over 200 schools, and over 80 more stadiums. Just now, as the Honorable, the Principal showed us, some people, we have this country, this continent is basically some country. When we come here, we go to Europe, we cannot go between. We have to go back to European Union. Now, China will try to help some country to build the airport. But I'm sorry to say, IMF, World Bank will tell you no. Your debt is increased. You cannot build. Because why? They made a lot of problems. They make it impossible. Now in Sierra Leone, have any people in the country here been to Sierra Leone? Yes. That country, they have the airport. Far from the capital. Whoever come to that country have to take the boat, the ferry. And one day, it's very hard. It's impossible for me to invite my president there. I cannot put my president in the boat. And one day, because of fighting against Ebola, a lot of material transport to that country is a big challenge to us. And now, after the Ebola, I invite my minister to go there. And that is a really bad day. The weather is very bad. So my minister kept quiet, holding the boat. And he don't like to talk to me anymore. You know? I feel very sad because why? It's me fight him to be there, but now he's holding the boat. And now the former president called China again and again to build a new port close to the capital, with the investment of $200 million. Yes, I think that airport is very key to that country to open to the world for the interaction, to the cooperation, very key. But Webman said, no, your debt problem. Now, they make it impossible because why? They have some story. They don't give us the new idea. We need to build a bridge, cross over. It will cost $1 billion. So 200 billion US dollar, they said too much to create a debt. They are about to build the bridge by $1 billion US dollar. I don't know why. A lot of teacher is very good. They teach them, you are free, but we have no choice but to fly to European Union and come back. It's not good. I challenge them. Come here to build the airport and seaport. Come here to build infrastructure, to follow me, to build the infrastructure. The rapid progress has been made in production capacity cooperation, I'm proud to say, in some pilot countries such as Ethiopia, such as Kenya. A dozen of priority partners, including Rwanda, Uganda, Egypt, Senegal, and Nigeria, the progress has made. And I'm very proud. That is one of, I also made some personal contribution there. So, those things, the contraction of the large number of special economic zone and industry park has achieved encouraging results. Infrastructure project industry park invested and built by China can be seen in anywhere in the continent now, which injected strong impetus into economic growth and created jobs for the local. We are very happy to see that the Addis-Djibouti Railway and Mombasa-Nairobi Railway are already in operation, which has driven fast development of Ethiopia and Kenya, setting up a great example of successful sustainable development for other African countries. Ethiopia has achieved for more than 10 years 2-digit growth rate. Ethiopia, everybody understands Ethiopia is poor, but Ethiopia now not only witnessed 2-digit growth rate for more than 10 years, but also has become Africa's largest textile exporter to America in the continent. When you go to Ethiopia, you will see that almost all the new infrastructure in that country are financed and built by China, rather than by the US, European Union, or Japan. We're very proud to say that with a strong commitment and support of China, the African continent is emerging. The continent is emerging. It's not sleeping. This year, 16 countries will witness more than 5% of the economic growth rate. I'm very happy. China is very happy to see that happen. We sincerely call on the developed country to earnestly to fulfill their historical and current responsibility and obligation for Africa. They own this continent. As a major developed country, they have to pay their responsibility and obligation and commit enough financial resources to support this continent's infrastructure, such as a railway, road, electricity, telecommunication, ports, so as to help this continent to address the three bottlenecks, rather than to smear and deter China-African cooperation and Africa's development by fabricating fake news of debt trap, neocolonialism, no transparent investment, and so on. They give you a lot of the news. That main purpose is very simple. That's to deter you not to cooperate with China. I challenge them. Get the money to build the infrastructure, the railway, the highway, the electricity here in the continent. Let them get the money from the pocket if they have. Some people have no money. Some people have no intention, but they're scared. They're scared what? This continent get emerged. This continent get independent economically and say no to them. I challenge them. Let them invest in your infrastructure. Let them get the money to build the infrastructure you need. That is. And China is ready to join the effort with international community by upholding the principle of planning together, build together, and share together to make unremitting effort to the lasting peace and sustainable development of the continent, so as to bring happiness and a better life to our 2.6 billion African and Chinese people. Ladies and gentlemen, just now I'm happy that the Vice-Chancellor introduced me. I'm proud to say I'm very African. I love to be the African. Meanwhile, I also now, I travel around the continent. I visited 38 countries. 38 countries in the continent. This country is the best. No one can come to this level at this moment. They go so far, but if they like to come to this level, and they need to take some time. You have a lot of advantages. Now is the right time for us to work together to make something better, benefit our people. But the number one challenge to me, to China-African relations, to China-South African relations, the number one challenge is we know we are good friends and we are brothers. When we meet each other, we say, "Hi, brother, sister," but we know very little about each other. We know very little each other. Even we don't know where you are, who you are. Even we don't know why you are black. When the black people go to China, the people are restrained. Why? Africa is so hot. Because we know nothing about the world. We are poor. So when we see the black people, they will say, Africa is too hot. We cannot go there. I said, no. In my country, 9.6 million square kilometers. No city, no provinces can have such a good natural environment. But they know nothing about that. Even they don't care, they don't know where's South Africa. I challenge them, where's South Africa? They say, they are Africa. Yes, I say, they are in Africa. But they are not so very Africa. 20 years ago, this country, everything, at that time we were very poor. We are very humble to learn from you. We are very jealous of you. We are very admire of you. But now China, because we focus on economy, while the Western people are fighting in the war, or fighting among themselves, they are fighting or talking, we are humble to lending and working. And of course, different, right? So they are fighting, they are free, but we have to work. We have over 1.4 billion population. We are not free to fight. We have to work to make sure such a huge population to live, to work, to eat, to go to school, to hospital. That is the basic human rights. The Western people will never understand. So they are full, so they are free to talk. Their human rights by lip. I'm sorry, I challenge them. Their human rights by lip, not by action. So, now, how can we do? I think the challenge to us, first, there are very few research institutes in China, South Africa, and Africa. Let's specialize in study of China, South Africa, and China-African relations. We lack of the research institute in terms of quality and quantity. It means insufficient intellectual support for deepening of our relations and cooperations. Second, there are very few researchers in both Chinese and African think tanks who are proficient and knowledgeable about the national condition, history, domestic and foreign policies of each other sides, the other sides. Even we don't know the black people. How can we say? So how can we expect them to come here for tourists or investment if we don't know each other? The third is in study China-African relations, experts and think tanks of both sides always get to know each other by books and information about each other written by the Western media and think tank, which is neither direct nor in-depth and not true. Sometimes they always use their mentality and with the colored glasses to see who we are. So when they write the books, I think that is what we know each other. With the core mentality and ill intention, the Western politician media think tank could not tell the true story about China, African, and China-African relations. In my views, that both Chinese and African think tanks should find out the correct answer to two fundamental issues. Two questions also, we have to work together to find out the answer to two questions. What kind of state-to-state relation serve the fundamental interests of Africa and their own country? What kind of relations serve the fundamental interests of the country, the people, and the nation? We have to know. Who is the true friend and reliable partner for Africa to realize lasting peace and durable and sustainable development? Therefore, it's timely and relevant for the University of Johannesburg to take the lead to launch and set up and establish the Center for China-African Study. I believe that under the strong leadership of Vice-Chancellor Professor Marwala and with the intellectual enthusiasm and commitment of Professor and Dr. David Mongyayi and all the friends present here, the center will certainly become one of the South Africa's major and most influential research institute for China, South Africa, and China-African study. The Chinese embassy in Africa, in South Africa, and myself in particular, will provide all-round support for the center research project and academy exchange program on China, South Africa, and China-African study, including the visa. I'm sure all the researchers, of course we study from the Chancellor, and also who the professor for the research center, I promise at least 2-year multiple entry visa. Immediately I can give you. When I get ready, 5-year multiple entry visa, I will give you. You will get my full support. We also warmly welcome more South African think tanks and experts to pay academic trip to China and other African countries to get first-hand experience and perspective, so as to come up with meaningful recommendations for the development of our relations and make greater contribution to deepen our mutually beneficial and understanding, friendship, and win-win cooperation for common prosperity between China and South Africa and Africa. I think even Ethiopia, Kenya, if you are ready to go there, I'd like to work together with you. I'd like to pay for that. I'm proud to say You go to Ethiopia, you go to Kenya, you go to Rwanda, not too far. They are emerging with China's strong support and commitment. I thank you so much.
Okay.
We cut this one.
Yes. Yes. Another one. Good. And then.
Oh. Now we have to take one picture here. Now.
Another picture.